My mother insisted I run daily despite my heart condition, but one day I collapsed, forcing everyone to finally confront her. At first, running with my mother seemed like a harmless ritual, just a way for us to bond. That is, until it became a daily ordeal that wore me down. At first, running with my mother seemed harmless, a simple way for us to spend time together. But soon, it turned into a daily struggle that left me drained and anxious. Each morning, she'd call out cheerfully, telling me to get ready whether I was up for it or not. It felt like I had a coach instead of a caring parent. But worse than being physically tired was how it made me feel about myself. Having a heart condition meant I needed to pace myself and avoid overexertion. My doctor had warned me to stay alert to symptoms like dizziness or chest pain, but my mother dismissed these precautions. To her, they were just excuses. I remember standing outside in the cool morning air, my skin tingling from the cold and my stomach twisted with worry. I knew she'd push me past what felt safe. It had started as something small, a way for us to bond, she said. She told me how she used to run with my older brother, her favorite child. My brother loved it. He thrived under her attention, running marathons with her and proudly calling it a family tradition. He was her golden child and she never let me forget it. Then there was my dad, always agreeing with her without question. I once asked him to help me convince her to let me rest for a day because I felt sick. He just shrugged and said, "She knows what's best for you." My little sister tried to keep the peace. She'd whisper encouragement to me at night or make excuses to distract my mom, like saying she needed my help with a school project, but it almost never worked. Soon, the occasional run turned into strict routines. Even when I said I was too tired or that my chest hurt, my mother brushed it off, calling me lazy or rebellious. I tried to stand up to her, showing her articles about the importance of rest, but she wouldn't listen. The breaking point came on a scorching day. We hadn't even gone far when my head started pounding and my chest tightened, but she kept pushing, her voice sharp and disappointed. Everything blurred, and then I hit the ground. When I woke up, strangers were gathered around me, their faces full of concern. "He needs help," a woman said firmly, her words cutting through the air like a slap. She turned to my mother with obvious disapproval. What followed was a public confrontation that shattered my mom's control. People challenged her, forcing her to face the consequences of her actions. After that, the morning run stopped, but tension lingered. Weeks passed with my mother prodding me about when we'd start running again. Then one morning, my dad pulled me aside, looking serious. He told me my mom had a new idea for bonding. "Something to strengthen our connection," he said. My sister tried to comfort me, but I could tell she was uneasy too. The new activity turned out to be fencing lessons. My mom claimed it would help with focus and discipline, but I suspected there was more to it. From the start, I felt uneasy. Fencing was precise, and I knew she'd use every mistake as proof of my failures. At our first session, she wasn't just my mother, she was my opponent. She pushed me hard, rarely offering encouragement. Each move felt like a silent critique of how she saw me. Over time, it became clear this wasn't about bonding. It was her way of staying in control, using every mistake to highlight my flaws under the guise of helping me improve. Determined not to fall into the same cycle, I set boundaries. I told her I needed one day off each week to recover. She seemed to agree at first, but when the day came, she showed up in my room with our fencing gear, acting like we'd never discussed it. "I thought we agreed," I said, my voice shaking as she looked at me with narrowed eyes. Before she could respond, my dad appeared in the doorway, nervously twisting a dish towel in his hands. The tension in the room was thick, and we all felt it. "Why not keep it simple?" he suggested, trying to downplay the situation. It was the same kind of compromise he always stuck to, but I stood firm, repeating my need for a break. My mother tried to dodge my refusal, saying this was about mental strength. When I refused again, her fake smile faded, and I could see her thinking of another way to get her way. Eventually, she gave in, though her silence felt heavy, like she was still competing with me. Even so, her next plan lingered in the air like a storm on the horizon. That evening, the house was unusually quiet, everyone moving through their routines like nothing had happened. During dessert, my mother casually mentioned organizing a charity fitness run. She made sure to point out it was for a good cause and warmly invited me to join. Afterward, my sister leaned over and whispered the truth. Our mother had already signed me up as a lead participant. She was counting on me to inspire others, using my role as the centerpiece of her project to impress her friends. This new challenge clung to me like a shadow, promising yet another ordeal hidden under the guise of an opportunity. I didn't know exactly what lay ahead, but one thing was clear. My mother never did anything without an ulterior motive. The charity run looked like a kind act for the community, but I sensed what was beneath it. My mother's plans were never simple. I realized that joining on her terms would only tighten her control over me, so I set a boundary. I told her I wouldn't be the lead participant. If I joined, it would be on my own terms. My voice shook a little, but I meant every word. Her eyes widened in surprise. I didn't usually stand up to her like this. As expected, she ignored my decision and printed flyers promoting me as the main attraction. When I saw them, I'd had enough. Calmly, I called the organizers and explained the situation, asking them to correct it. They apologized and removed me from the spotlight, taking away her moment of control. She was furious. At dinner, after a day of tense silence, she said slyly, "This could have been a bonding experience if you'd just gone along with it." My father, nodding as always, added, "Helping others might give you some clarity." Her control tactics escalated. She started signing me up for events without asking, framing it as kindness that made me seem ungrateful if I resisted. I decided to take a different approach. Instead of saying no outright, I chose activities I liked, things far from her sphere of influence. One time during a lavish charity ball she'd planned, a mix-up sent us to a quirky crafting convention in the adjoining hall. Surrounded by eccentric artists, my mother struggled to hide her discomfort, pretending to be interested. I, on the other hand, had fun, talking to strangers and laughing at the absurdity. Her grip loosened as I found ways to sidestep her control without directly fighting her. But the peace didn't last. Her next scheme involved chess tournaments. She framed it as intellectual growth for the family, but it was obvious she wanted another way to assert control. During one match, eager to prove herself, she broke her own rules, claiming it was to teach us. Her need to win and control unraveled into impatience and frustration when things didn't go her way. Her anger bubbled beneath the surface, but I didn't let it shake me. After one particularly bad loss, she stormed off, realizing she couldn't force me into her games anymore. These days, when she suggests family projects or bonding activities, I think carefully before agreeing. Most of the time, I choose to keep my distance. I'm graduating soon and have clear plans for my future. Once I'm independent, I intend to go no contact. I've applied for an internship that matches my career goals, and with hard work, it will give me the stability I need. My sister supports me quietly, keeping things light between us to ease the tension. My father, as always, stays passive, nodding along without really engaging. At home, I prepare carefully. My savings are secure, my documents organized, and every step toward independence is deliberate. My mother occasionally remarks on my withdrawal, but her voice has lost its usual edge. Each step I take away from her influence feels like a victory. Soon, I'll be free to live on my own terms. The thought of a life where her control no longer looms over me is liberating. It's a future I'm determined to create.